Reasons for Creed 3. And now let us get on to Netflix and Friends, and we have The Last of Us. The Last of Us, which is the big video game adaptation from Naughty Dog, and it seems like everybody's saying this is how you do it. This is finally we've started cracking how to adapt video games. So Sharon, would you tell us about The Last of Us? What is this all about?
Yes, as a non-gamer, I knew had no prior knowledge of this thing beforehand.
Yeah.
So The Last of Us, it is set. It starts off in modern day America
Mm-hmm.
with a family, a man, a single father, and with his brother and their young daughter. And when they start off actually sort of 20 years before that, where there's a group of scientists sitting around a table, and they're saying, oh, how do you think the world's going to end, basically? And
Yeah.
one of them says, well, I think it's going to be a virus. Oh, well, the other one says, well, no, I think actually it's not going to be a virus. I think it's going to be fungus.
Yeah.
And the premise of this is that it was predicted, sort of 20 years ago, that as the most aggressive form of a parasite,
Organism.
basically, that will take an organism that will take over its host
Yeah.
and almost completely change the sort of composition of its host is fungus. So that the world won't end with a zombie apocalypse the way we imagine it in Walking Dead. It won't end with a COVID-like virus that kills many people. It will be this sort of fungal infection that it turns people, makes them hyper aggressive, or just changes their behaviour. And this
Cordyceps.
event, yeah, and this event basically happens, and this fungal apocalypse happens, for want of a better word. And then you jump forward, and you see this the first day, the first couple of days, when this goes from being like a small incident to say this exponential spread, where it suddenly becomes a pandemic, and then desperate things happen during this first sort of 24, 48 hours. And then you jump forward in time. So is it 15 years or 20 years?
20 years.
Yeah, not yeah,
20
20.
years forward in
Yeah.
time. And then you meet a couple of the same characters again, having lived in this sort of sort of devastated world in
Yeah.
Boston, where it's basically a military state.
Yeah.
The emergency forces that were sent in to help the situation when it feels like DEFRA or whatever were sent in when this catastrophe first happened. They started organising survivors, and they started collecting people in these communities and feeding them. It has become a police state.
Yeah.
And there's this a one girl that they have discovered, who it turns out we don't understand at the beginning, that she is actually immune. She has been bitten or she's been infected, but she hasn't become demented.
Because she has to become a fungus monster.
A
Fungus,
monster.
yeah. Fungus.
Because
She's a fun girl, yeah.
yeah, they make
It's that whole thing.
they make a big deal about making sure that you don't call these things zombies. They're not zombies.
They're not zombies.
Yeah.
She has become a
These-
fungus
No.
monster.
These infected.
They're,
So
they're
she
fun
was bitten,
guys.
but she
They're fun
wasn't
guys.
infected. Fun guys, yeah. But she was infected, and so but they want to. There's a group of people called, is it the Firebird?
Fireflies.
Fireflies.
Yeah,
The
fireflies.
Fireflies, who basically are this group of like scientists and doctors and medical people who have created their own like breakaway sort of republic, or not republic, they're like a rebellion. They're
They're
underground,
rebellion,
where they want to basically find out if there is a genetic answer to this fungal infection, and they think this girl might be it. The fact that she's immune, they can, her blood or maybe some of her cells might be the answer. And so this one man, our hero, played by Pedro Pascal,
yeah. Joel.
Yeah.
it is his mission, Joel, to take this girl Ellie from Boston to where they believe the Fireflies base is, which is basically the other side of the country.
Yeah.
And he's also lost track of his brother, who's living in, they believe, in like Wyoming, and he wants to find out
What happened to
what's
his
happened
brother?
to his brother. So you have this sort of dual purpose. He wants to find his brother, but he's also willing to take this girl, tag her along to find these fireflies. And then adventures happen every week. It's almost like it's episodic in that how you have
Yeah.
these episodes of
Yeah.
you meet a group of people, something happens, you move on. You meet a group of people, something happens, you move on.
Yeah.
So you don't see the same cast
Almost
all
like
the way
levels of
through.
a video game.
Oh, is it?
That's a
Right.
coincidence. I never thought of that. No, I didn't really. Genuinely, I'm like, no, that's point. Good
Yeah.
point.
And then you get these almost like side stories where there's like you see it from a different character's point of view, you see the story from their point of view, and then
Yeah.
our characters are just like periphery, or you suddenly see it
Yeah.
from their point of view. So it swaps almost like perspective as you go through, and you meet people, people's opinions change. You think, oh, is this a good guy? Is this a bad guy? And then you find actually there's good guys and bad guys, and both sometimes that's both the same person.
Yep. Okay, so we don't want to spoil a whole bunch of stuff about this show. I think that you've given the premise cool. Some bits of it, I think, are a little bit Walking Dead. Some bits of it, but it's kind of like, oh. So what did you guys think about it? What did you guys, Sean? What did you think?
Okay, well, for me,
because I think you both have seen all of the episodes. I've seen 5 or 9 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it's funny. It's a bit of a mixed bag for me. I mean, like. I think the acting is first class in most of the episodes. I think the acting is absolutely fantastic, and I think that there is what I really liked is that they do some proper things which they would do, especially in the last episode. I'm sure you know the bit I'm talking about, Sharon. Is I just like, oh, thank you. At last, you're doing something incredibly sensible. You know, and the reason I said, yes, that's what you would. Yes, of course. Because I was thinking, what? And just like, okay. So, and I thought there was I mean, I'm not normally one for, because it's not lots of action, is there? There's not like huge amounts of action in it, really.
No, when violence happens, it almost comes out of the blue at you. Basically, as it does for most people, I suppose.
So you'd think for me, because I like to see, headshots and things, but it's not. But I just thought it was really good. It was quite compelling. Not all the episodes, and I didn't really see the point. Although it was an interesting episode, I didn't really see the point of episode 3. Perhaps you could help me with that one.
That was going to be my next question.
That was perhaps someone could help me with why that was in there, because I didn't see the point of that. Maybe there's something in the game that those particular characters.
I think there's something in the game with those particular characters, and I think because. I'm not sure about whether you guys were aware of it, but when episode 3 aired, there was this big, massive hoopla about episode 3, and everybody was going, "Oh my god, episode 3!" With a lot of people on Twitter and on the internet going, "Best hour of TV ever!" So really? I remember actually getting to episode 3 and watching it and going, it's a bit standard.
It was a bit standard, yeah. And also he does the one he's probably one of the ones that does the one thing when he goes chasing. It's like, to get anyway. Yeah. So episode 3, I didn't really see the point
about how the dynamic has worked. Is the theme? I don't know how many seasons they're planning, but the theme of this season 1 is love, and the different forms that it takes. So there's romantic, there's siblings, there's
good point.
Community, there's religion, there's all these different
romantic
forms of love come into it. And so each episode is about love. So the things that people do for love, and the consequences of, if you sort of.
Wow.
So that's the only thing I've read about it, because I know nothing about it. But that's
I'm not. I know nothing about the games or anything.
Each episode has got a different displays of different characteristics of love.
Yeah, you see, no, Sharon, as I said, I'm only on episode 5, and I have a similar theory as to. That I'm waiting to see the other episodes to see whether my theory of what they're trying to say actually plays out. But it plays up to episode 5, I think is kind of consistent. Although having said that, people were raving about episode 3. For me, the best thing in the show that I've seen so far is the beginning of episode 2. And it's the bit that's set, I think, in Indonesia. And there's this whole sequence that's set, and I love that sequence. It's probably about 7-8 minutes set in Indonesia, and I love that sequence. I've watched it twice. I've watched that sequence twice, and I think just the way it's done, I'm just kind of like, it really just gets home to you. This is how bad this thing is. But yeah, I love it. But yeah, sorry, sure.
Yeah, that is good. That is a good point. For me, the last episode was class. I loved the last episode. I was totally glued to the last episode, and that's where I thought tremendous. There was absolutely between. Should we say there's a scene between Ellie and Joel, and it was just. I mean, I'm not sentimental, and I don't normally, but I just thought it showed. And Sharon, you thank you for saying about it's all about sort of all the episodes about love, because that makes much more sense, But that I thought that piece of acting was outstanding of that particular scene. Yeah, so I like this series, to be honest.
Yeah, it's probably the best. It's probably the best I've seen of Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey.
Oh yeah.
Who was little Lyra Mormont in Game of Thrones. Yeah,
She
but
was great in that.
she's really good in this. She's really
She became really popular over that, didn't she?
yeah,
Oh
she
yeah,
did.
the North
But
remembers.
yeah,
The North.
as she's quite she's as the bratty sort of teenager in this. She's really
Yeah.
good as the bratty teenager in this. So okay,
She's got, yeah. Okay.
so is there if there's nothing else that you guys have to say about that, how many stars would you give The Last of Us?
Oh, go on, Sharon. You can go first because.
I'm torn because I liked it. Yeah.
Mm.
But for me, it did sort of come and go. My interest in
Come
it.
and
I
go.
watched it all,
I
but
agree.
it did sort of come and go a bit. So I'm not sure whether to give it a high 3 or to go for a 4. So it's to me, it's border between the two. I think there's elements that certainly
totally
go
concur.
into a 4. The sort of the way it was constructed, didn't always take the easier path down, and they didn't make all the characters likable.
No,
They did things
that's
that were unpleasant and unlikable. I think, well, that probably is what you'd resort to if you were surviving.
Yeah, if you were surviving like that, it
So,
was. I mean, I'm with
but
you
I'm
on
not a gamer,
that.
so
Sharon.
I don't have any previous thing with it. So
No.
I am torn between a high 3 and a 4. So I suppose if there is an element of doubt, I'd go with the high 3.
High 3, yeah, and I would say that I totally agree. I concur everything about that, Sharon. It's very in and out. But I did love the last episode very, very much. I think this would be a nice one to do for episodes because they are very much contained. I think this would be a good one. But yeah, I'm gonna stretch it purely for that last episode because I loved it when the near right at the end. It's like, well, I'm going to do it. So yeah, so I'm going to go 4 with this one. It just touches the 4 for me.
Cool. Yeah. And when I finish watching it, maybe by next week, I'll let you, because I'll tell you one of the reasons why I have not finished watching The Last of Us is because the one thing the show does very well is a pervading sense of dread. There's just this pervading sense of dread, and it has that kind of it has that little bit of a Game of Thrones thing where you're like, nobody is safe. Joel and Ellie are safe for a while, but you're not entirely sure, okay, what the heck's going to happen. And anybody that they meet, you're like, okay, no one. And they have this whole thing where they walk into a building and they just take their time. And then for me, it's not even the tension, just the dread. The dread, because I know something bad's going to happen. So there's no attention on whether something bad's going to happen. I know something bad is going to happen. It's just kind of like, oh, when's it going to happen? Oh, I'm going to let it happen already. And then I've taken quite a few breaks from this. So I've just stopped it, gone away for a couple of days, then come back and gone, all right, cool. Let the bad thing happen. So, yeah, and I think it's really, really good about doing that sort of pervading sense of dread. That's why I've been watching it. But hopefully, maybe by next week, I would have it. Then I'll be able to go, yes, Sean, yeah, that bit of the final episode. But I know that people have mentioned even the video game, and it was very rare for this as a video game. A lot of people talk about crying at the video game and about how the video game just packs a really big emotional punch. And I think, well, I've never played the video game myself, but I'm expecting that by the end of this. Right.